There are moments in life when we're not asking for miracles, we're not asking for fireworks or grand gestures, we're just asking to be seen, to be acknowledged, to matter. But silence is a response. It's not the absence of noise. It's the loudest declaration of all. It says, you're not worth a response. You're not worth my energy. You don't matter enough. And that kind of silence, it cuts deeper than any word ever could. We live in a culture that often mistakes strength for emotional distance, as if staying silent somehow gives us the upper hand, as if withholding connection keeps us safe. But here's what we rarely admit. Silence doesn't protect us. It isolates us. It punishes the people who care and teaches them to doubt their worth. It makes people beg, not for money, not for gifts, but for humanity, for eye contact, for a sentence, for some kind of signal that says, you're not invisible. Let me be clear, begging is not weakness, it's vulnerability. And vulnerability is the bravest damn thing we can do. To stand there, heart open, asking someone to meet you halfway, that takes guts. That's not weakness. That's courage showing up in its rawest form. So when someone reaches out, when they ask, when they plead, when they say, please talk to me, and all they're met with is silence, that's not neutrality, it's abandonment. We tell ourselves we're avoiding conflict. We think, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but not saying anything is saying something. Silence tells a story too, and the story it tells is rejection. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the right words, but if you care, if someone matters, you show up. You say, I don't have the answers, but I'm here. That one sentence could be the difference between healing and heartbreak. Because here's the truth, when people are hurting, they don't need perfection, they need presence. They don't need you to fix them, they need to know they're not alone. So the next time you feel tempted to say nothing, remember, silence isn't gentle. Silence isn't neutral. Silence isn't kind. It's cold, it's loud, and it echoes long after the moment has passed. We like to think that silence is harmless, that if we don't say anything, we're keeping the peace, that holding our tongue is somehow noble, wise even. We convince ourselves that silence is neutral, that it's passive, that it's just nothing. But let's be real. Silence is never just silence. It speaks loudly. It carries a weight. And sometimes that weight is heavier than any harsh word ever could be. Because when you choose silence in a moment that calls for presence, when you look away instead of leaning in, you're not avoiding harm, you are the harm. Silence becomes a weapon, not because of what it says, but because of what it refuses to say. It refuses to acknowledge. It refuses to validate. It refuses to care. When someone is hurting, when someone is reaching out, no matter how clumsy or emotional or raw, and all they get is silence in return, the message is crystal clear. You're not worth a response. That's where the real damage happens. You see, people don't always need solutions. They don't even need you to agree with them, but they need to be seen, heard, witnessed. And when your silence replaces what could have been empathy, that absence echoes. It says, your pain is inconvenient. Your feelings are too much. I'd rather retreat than risk being vulnerable with you. Silence, when used like that, isn't passive. It's aggressive in disguise. It's emotionally violent. It's a wall disguised as composure. And sometimes it's not even about what you're refusing to say, but who you're choosing to abandon in that refusal. Maybe you're not yelling. Maybe you're not slamming doors or throwing blame, but you're still choosing distance. You're still saying, I don't care enough to connect. And here's what makes silence such a cruel tool. It lets the person on the receiving end fill in all the blanks. They replay every conversation, every look, every possible mistake. They spiral. Was it something I said? Did I ask for too much? Am I not worth a response? Silence doesn't just sting, it leaves people questioning their own worth. And the truth is, most people can survive a hard truth. They can survive a messy conversation. They can even survive hearing something they didn't want to hear. But what's unbearable? Being treated like they don't matter at all. So when you choose silence, especially with someone who is already hurting, you're not keeping peace, you're keeping power. And that power dynamic, that silence, that's the weapon. If you truly care, if you really believe in connection over control, you speak, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't know exactly what to say, because silence might protect your pride, but it will cost someone else their peace. And at the end of the day, your silence says more than your words ever could. Begging is vulnerability, not weakness. We live in a world that tells us to stay strong, to keep our dignity, to never let them see you sweat. And somewhere along the way, we started to believe that really asking for love, attention, clarity, or care was weak. We started treating begging like it was something shameful, something desperate, something beneath us. But here's the truth that doesn't get talked about enough. Begging isn't weak. Begging is raw vulnerability in motion. When someone begs not for power or control, but for connection, they are laying every ounce of pride down on the table. They are opening themselves up, completely exposed with no armor, no mask, no performance, just truth, just need. And that takes courage. It takes courage to say, please don't walk away from me. It takes courage to say, talk to me. I need to understand. It takes courage to say, I know I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. Please don't shut me out. Begging isn't about manipulation. It's about desperation for connection. It's the final attempt to salvage something that still matters. It's the plea of someone who hasn't given up, even when it would be easier to pretend they don't care. You know what's easy? Stonewalling, ghosting, shrugging and saying it is what it is. What's hard is staying in the ring when your heart is on the line. What's hard is being brave enough to say, this is where I'm hurting, this is where I need you. We've been conditioned to believe that begging is embarrassing, but only because we've been taught to hide our vulnerability. We've been told to get over it before we've even had the chance to feel it. But look deeper. What's more human than asking to be held in a moment of fear? What's more honest than saying, I can't do this without you? What's more real than needing someone? Begging strips away the performance. It's where pride goes to die so love can have a chance to live. It says, you matter so much to me that I'm willing to risk rejection. I'm willing to risk looking like a fool just for a chance to keep this alive. That's not weakness. That's strength most people never tap into. And listen, this doesn't mean we should beg endlessly or let ourselves be emotionally starved by someone unwilling to meet us. Boundaries are sacred. Self-respect matters. But in those moments where your heart says, say something, do something, fight for this, and you do, that's not pathetic. That's sacred. That's the messy, beautiful bravery of being fully human. So let's stop shaming people for wanting to be chosen. Let's stop mocking those who reach out with trembling hands, hoping someone might take it. Because begging in its truest form isn't about losing your power. It's about loving with your whole heart, even when there's no guarantee you'll be loved back. And there's nothing weak about that. There's something profoundly human about the need to be seen, not fixed, not analyzed, not even agreed with, just seen, acknowledged, recognized as real, as valid, as here. And yet we underestimate how powerful simple acknowledgement really is. We think we have to solve someone's pain to matter. We believe if we can't offer a perfect answer or a clear resolution, we should just stay quiet, stay out of the way. But here's the truth. People don't want you to fix them. They want you to witness them. They want to know that their pain isn't invisible, that their joy isn't dismissed, that their presence, even in its most broken, messy, complicated form, is felt by someone else. And in those moments of heartbreak, of confusion, of inner chaos, what people crave isn't a hero. They crave connection. Let me give you a picture. Someone sitting across from you, eyes puffy, voice shaking. Maybe they just went through a loss, a betrayal, a moment of deep fear, and they finally gather the courage to say, "I'm not okay." Now imagine saying nothing, just nodding, shifting in your seat, changing the subject. Imagine skipping past the discomfort like it's a pothole in conversation. What does that feel like for them? It feels like erasure, like they exposed their soul and it bounced off a wall. Now imagine something different. Imagine looking them in the eye and saying, "I hear you. That sounds unbelievably heavy. I'm so sorry you're carrying this." No solution, no preaching, no at least to soften it, just acknowledgement. That moment, that tiny sentence, it can soften grief, it can slow shame, it can be the difference between someone spiraling alone and someone taking a breath, just one, knowing they're not invisible. Because when we acknowledge someone's pain, we interrupt their inner monologue of isolation. We say, "You're not crazy." We say, "You're not overreacting." We say, "What happened to you matters." And that is one of the most healing things we can offer another human being. We don't have to agree with every feeling. We don't have to understand every experience. But when someone is brave enough to open their heart in our presence, the very least we can do, the most important thing we can do is meet that moment with presence instead of absence. Acknowledgement isn't weakness, it's not awkwardness. It's a form of emotional literacy. It says, "I'm here, I'm listening, I might not have all the answers, but I'm not going to pretend you didn't just bleed truth in front of me." And the thing about acknowledgement is this: it doesn't solve everything, it doesn't make the pain disappear, but it makes the person feel less alone in it. And sometimes that's all someone needs to take the next step, to stay, to breathe, to not give up. So don't underestimate the power of that one look, that one sentence, that quiet presence in the middle of the storm. Acknowledgement is love in its simplest, purest form. There are few things more painful than standing right next to someone and still feeling completely alone. That's what emotional abandonment feels like. It's not always loud. It's not always a slam door or a goodbye note. Most of the time, it's quieter than that. It's subtle. It's a shift in energy. It's a lack of eye contact. It's the coldness in someone's silence after you've poured your soul out. It's the moment you realize someone is still physically present, but emotionally they've already walked away. And it hurts. It hurts in a way that's hard to describe because it's hard to prove. There's no big event to point to, no dramatic moment, no obvious betrayal. It's 1,000 small absences, one after another. It's when you share your truth and get no response. It's when you're crying in the same room and they don't even look up. It's when you say, "I need you," and the air between you stays still, untouched by any effort to care. Emotional abandonment is a slow erosion of trust. It doesn't always break your heart in one blow. It wears it down little by little until one day you look around and realize you've been sitting in silence with someone who no longer reaches for you. And here's the thing. You don't need to scream at someone to abandon them. You don't need to leave the house. You don't need to write cruel words. You just need to stop showing up emotionally, stop asking, stop listening, stop choosing them when they need you the most. We like to think that love is sustained by grand gestures, But really, it's the little ones that keep it alive. The daily I see you, the check-ins, the hand that reaches out even during conflict, the willingness to stay emotionally open even when it's uncomfortable. When those things disappear, the person on the other end doesn't just feel unloved, they feel erased. Because emotional abandonment doesn't just hurt, it confuses. It leaves someone wondering, did I do something wrong? Am I asking for too much? Why do I feel so alone when you're right here? That confusion turns inward. It breeds self-doubt, shame, even self-blame. It teaches people to silence their needs, to stop reaching out, to shrink. And what makes it so devastating is that it's often invisible to outsiders. There's no obvious wound to bandage, no clear event to process, just an ever-growing distance where closeness used to live. So if you've ever felt that sting, it's not just about what was taken away, it's about the absence of what should have been offered. Care, presence, comfort, effort. And if you're someone who's tempted to emotionally shut down, to retreat when things get hard, know this. You may think you're protecting yourself, but that silence becomes a weapon. That disconnection becomes a scar the other person carries long after you're gone. People can survive conflict. They can survive disagreement. They can even survive heartbreak, but feeling invisible to someone they love, that cuts deeper than almost anything else. So be brave enough to stay emotionally present, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're tired, even when you're not sure what to say, because your emotional absence may be the loudest thing the other person hears. And healing doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. We often think of courage as bold, dramatic acts, running into battle, standing on stage, telling the truth to a crowd. But some of the most courageous acts you'll ever witness won't look like that. Sometimes courage looks like sitting across from someone you love and saying words that shake in your throat. It's saying, I'm hurt. It's saying, I don't know how to fix this, but I want to. It's saying, can we talk, when every part of you wants to run away? That is courage, and let's be honest, it's terrifying, because real communication, the kind that creates closeness and healing and understanding, it doesn't always feel good in the moment. It's not always eloquent. It's not always well received. It's messy. It's vulnerable. It's raw and uncomfortable. It exposes you. And that's why so many people avoid it. Not because they don't care, but because they're afraid of confrontation, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of opening a wound they don't know how to close. But silence, avoidance, that doesn't preserve love, it quietly erodes it. You see, when we choose not to communicate, we're still sending a message. We're just sending it with absence instead of words. And often that silence says, I'd rather stay comfortable than connect. But love was never meant to be comfortable all the time. Love requires discomfort. It requires risk. It requires saying the thing you've been holding in your chest, even when you're scared it might be too much. Because not saying it, that can be far more damaging than saying it wrong. The people we care about need to know where we stand. They need to know we're willing to meet them in the middle of the mess. Not just when things are easy, but when they're hard, when they're fragile, when they're on the edge of falling apart. It takes courage to initiate a hard conversation, to own your part, to ask for what you need, to admit, I'm scared too. And it takes even more courage to listen, to really hear someone else's pain without immediately defending yourself. But that kind of communication, that kind of emotional honesty, that's how trust is built. That's how healing begins. That's how people grow toward each other instead of drifting apart. So if you've been holding something back, if your silence is a shield, ask yourself, is it protecting you or is it disconnecting you? Because you don't need to have perfect words. You don't need a script or a therapist's vocabulary. You just need to show up real, honest, willing, say, I don't know how to start this, but I know we need to talk. Say, I care enough to try. Say, this matters to me. Because communication is more than talking, it's an act of bravery. And the people who are worth loving deeply are also worth speaking up for. Would you like to move on to the last one? Healing requires presence, not perfection. We live in a world obsessed with getting it right. Say the right thing, do the right thing, be the right kind of support, strong but soft, wise but quiet, calm but passionate. It's exhausting, isn't it? And when someone we love is hurting, or when we're the one who's done the hurting, our first instinct is to panic, to fix it, to say the perfect thing that will make everything okay again. But here's what so many people miss. Healing doesn't come from perfect words. It doesn't come from flawless apologies or expert-level emotional intelligence. Healing comes from presence, from being there, emotionally, physically, spiritually, when someone needs you. That's it. Simple. Not easy, but powerful. Think about it. When you were at your lowest, did you need someone to give you a 3-point plan to happiness? Or did you need someone to sit next to you in your mess and just not leave? Someone who didn't flinch when you cried, who didn't rush to change the subject, who didn't try to gloss over your pain with toxic positivity. You needed someone who could sit with you in the dark, not because they had a flashlight, but because they weren't afraid of the dark itself. That's presence, that's love in its most human form. And if you've ever been on the other side, watching someone you love struggle, then you know how helpless it can feel. You want to reach in and take their pain away. You want to say the exact thing that will bring them back to peace. And when you can't, you might start to believe that you're failing them. But hear me on this. You are not required to be perfect to be healing. Your job is not to erase the pain. Your job is to bear witness to it, to hold the space, to be soft when the world has been sharp, to offer steadiness, not solutions. And yes, sometimes you'll say the wrong thing. Sometimes your presence will be imperfect, messy, human. That's okay. That's real. The people we love don't need our perfection. They need our willingness.